Burmese pythons have devastated native wildlife in the Everglades. Researchers turn to tech, hoping robotic rabbits can lure the snakes out.
The first rays of sunlight touched the Florida wetlands, revealing something both familiar and strange. Small rabbits dotted the landscape, still as statues, yet every part of them was engineered to deceive.
Heat signature hopefully is going to make it look like an actual live animal to the python, and then it's supposed to smell like a live animal, and it's supposed to move around like a live animal.
Inside their soft bodies waited a trap for the most feared predator in the swamp. Locals thought it was madness. Scientists called it progress. But when the first python appeared, what started as a risky experiment soon became a jaw-dropping revelation that no one saw coming. The silent takeover in Everglades. The Everglades stretch farther than the eye can measure. It's a subtropical maze of sawgrass, slow-moving water, and tangled mangroves. From above, it looks endless. On the ground, the air feels thick and warm, filled with the calls of birds and the splash of hidden creatures. For years, this place stood as one of the last untouched frontiers in the United States. But something has changed. The balance that once held everything together is collapsing. The danger arrived because people wanted something interesting in their homes. Burmese pythons, which are native to Southeast Asia, were brought into Florida during the 1990s as exotic pets. They were long, powerful, and for many owners, far too much to handle. When they grew too big, some were set free. Others escaped on their own. Then nature played its part in making everything worse. In the early 1990s, when Hurricane Andrew tore through South Florida, a reptile breeding facility fell apart and released even more of them into the wild. What waited for them outside was perfect for survival. The Everglades stayed warm all year. Dense vegetation created hiding places at every turn. Animals that lived there never evolved to fear a predator like this. Very quickly, the snakes grew large, sometimes even bigger than the native species. With no real enemies to stop them and the ability to lay 50 to 100 eggs each year, the population surged. Today, scientists believe tens of thousands of these reptiles crawl and swim through South Florida. The consequences on the food chain are disastrous. Burmese pythons have eaten at least 76 different prey species. Everything from birds to mammals to iguanas has been found inside their stomachs. Even alligators have fallen to these silent hunters. Research has painted a deeply worrying picture. A study in the year 2012 showed raccoons declining by 99.3% since the year 1997. Opossums dropped by 98.9%. Bobcats dropped by 87.5%. Marsh rabbits, cottontails, and foxes have faded away so much that many believe they are gone. And the worst part is, this invasion is still gaining speed. Battle for the Everglades. Every disappearing creature in the Everglades triggers another problem waiting to spread. When small mammals vanish, birds of prey lose their meals. Hungry predators become fewer and weaker. Even the things that seem invisible to most people, like decomposing remains, change. Without scavengers, dead animals stay on the ground longer, and this affects how nutrients return to the soil. The whole balance that kept this subtropical wilderness functioning is shifting in a direction no one asked for. The Burmese python has carved its dominance into this land. Step by step, it is pushing the ecosystem to a point where recovery looks uncertain. People have not been ignoring the danger. Government agencies have poured millions of dollars into removal attempts. Yet despite all the effort, the results feel frustrating. The swamps hide what you cannot easily fight. The snakes spread faster than anyone can remove them, and no one can find where they all are. The wetlands stretch more than 1.5 million acres, and much of it is nearly impossible to explore. The snakes make themselves nearly invisible as their patterned scales sink into mud and brush. Rangers have admitted that they simply do not know how many are out there. Estimates reach into the tens of thousands, but the real number might be much higher. What frightens experts even more is the idea that this invasion might not stop where it started. Warmer temperatures across the south could help the pythons move beyond Florida. Ecosystems in states further north could be next. Nobody wants the damage seen in the Everglades to repeat itself somewhere else. People thought they had seen the strangest solutions already. They believed there was nothing left to try. Yet a new plan was about to take shape, one that nobody expected, one that would change everything about how the hunt for these reptiles worked. And the moment it began, the battle for the Everglades took a wild turn that shocked everyone watching. Swamp War? Some ideas are born from pressure, and this one came from an enemy that refused to slow down. Florida officials knew the invading Burmese pythons were overwhelming the Everglades. The ecosystem itself seemed to strain under their presence. People watched native animals disappear, and scientists warned that the balance of life in the wetlands was falling apart. So the state looked for a plan that could push back against a creature that blended perfectly into the reeds and water. They chose something unpredictable. They opened the gates to the public. The year was 2013 when Florida launched a challenge unlike anything the swamp had ever seen. It was called the Python Challenge, and the invitation went out to anyone who believed they had skill or courage. Hunters, nature enthusiasts, even curious beginners were welcome to step into the wetlands. Officials hoped that the excitement of a real hunt mixed with cash rewards would spark a powerful response. The purpose seemed simple enough. The state wanted people to understand how invasive the Burmese pythons had become. They wanted help removing the snakes that were wiping out small mammals, birds, and everything that sat below them in the food chain. By turning the entire situation into a high-stakes contest, they believed the public would take action and spread awareness far beyond state borders. Basic training was provided, especially on one rule that could not be broken. The snakes were protected by anti-cruelty law. Participants were required to use humane methods approved by the American Veterinary Medical Association. Firearms could not be used. Traps were not allowed. No bait, no explosives, no chemicals. Anyone who wanted in had to pay a registration fee of $25 and complete a mandatory online course before stepping into the wetlands. On the surface, the plan appeared daring and clever. Yet once the hunt began, the brutal nature of the swamp took over. More than 1,600 participants answered the call that first year. They arrived from all over the country with airboats, equipment, and big expectations. Television crews filmed the excitement. People scanned the thick brush for even the slightest movement. The hot air buzzed with insects while predators watched from the shadows. The atmosphere felt like a survival challenge turned into a spectacle. However, facts can be cruel. Weeks passed and the final count was only 68 snakes. Scientists barely saw a change in the population. Tens of thousands were still out there. The invasion continued without hesitation. Florida pushed forward, determined not to fall behind. The Python Challenge returned year after year. Larger prizes, better strategies. Some hunters used night vision equipment and thermal scopes that could detect a warm body hidden among the tall grass. A few became skilled enough to remove dozens each season. During the 2025 event, one competitor alone managed to capture 60 pythons in just 10 days. Even then, experts looked at the numbers and arrived at the same conclusion every time. The population curve would only rise, and the more they learned about these silent predators, the more unsettling the next plan would become, because what Florida tried next would push the fight into a new and strange direction. The new Everglades fight. A sudden shift in strategy was about to change everything, and it came with paychecks and rules that sounded almost like they were preparing for a war in the swamp. Officials eventually saw that the competitions were getting too flashy and not very productive. As a result, they switched to something far more intense. In the year 2017, the South Florida Water Management District launched a plan that finally treated the invasion like the crisis it was. They called it the Python Elimination Program. This time, the participants were not weekend explorers hoping for a trophy. They were trained and licensed professionals who were hired to hunt every single day. They earned money by the hour, and the larger the snake they caught, the more they earned. It turned the quiet waters of the Everglades into a job site where danger waited in the dark. Night became the main battleground. Hunters navigated narrow canals with flashlights and moonlight guiding them. The water was so dark that the reflections of trees looked like shadows trying to grab the boats. Bodies grew sore, eyes strained. Every movement in the grass could be a giant coil resting silently. It demanded patience and nerves that did not break. The program worked at first. The number of pythons captured rose steadily. Some nights ended with several snakes laid across the deck of a boat. The optimism was brief. Even as the kills increased, the python population kept climbing. For everyone taken out, it felt like two more dissolved into the undergrowth. Hunters were giving everything they had, yet the invasion barely slowed down. Money became another problem. Millions of dollars were going into the effort. Paying contractors to chase snakes across 1.5 million acres drained budgets faster than anyone wanted to admit. They needed help beyond human persistence. That was when scientists introduced a strategy that sounded almost like a crime thriller. A select group of male pythons were caught, tagged with radio transmitters, and released again. They became what experts called Judas snakes. These males would go searching for mates, especially during breeding season. When the signal led hunters to a group of snakes, large females were usually there, carrying dozens of future invaders. The team would remove all of them, including the tagged male. Even with this clever move, progress was slow. The Everglades stretched out like a maze of marsh and sawgrass. There were countless hiding places. The pythons were silent survivors who wrapped themselves into the land so deeply that humans felt like outsiders every time they stepped in. As the 2010s came to an end, a new truth settled over the operation. People alone could never defeat an animal that was built to remain unseen. It was like trying to stop a growing wildfire with a pair of scissors. Every success appeared tiny when compared to the problem spreading beneath the water, so officials were forced to look in a new direction. If humans could not overpower these predators, maybe something else could outthink them. And soon, a different kind of hunter rose from an unexpected source. The python smell detectives. After years of trying everything from human search teams to bounty payouts, experts faced a harsh conclusion. Eyes and instincts alone were not enough to track a creature that could disappear beneath the mud in seconds. The snakes were winning. That changed when the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission launched a bold experiment in the year 2020. It involved using something humans have relied on since ancient times, a partner with instincts sharpened over thousands of years: dogs. They handpicked two trained professionals for the job. Truman, a black Labrador, and Eleanor, a poinsettia with a speckled coat, had already been involved in missions to locate bedbugs and sea turtle nests. Their reputation was built on accuracy and courage. Now their task was different. They were being asked to find Burmese pythons deep inside the swamps. Training took about 3 months. It started in a controlled setting where the dogs learned to connect a very specific scent with their mission. Towels soaked with the smell of Burmese pythons were placed around them. Every successful detection got a clear signal of approval from their handlers. Positive reinforcement shaped every moment. It was explained that when they located a python during real operations, their reward would be a tennis ball and a proud pat. The second phase of training moved outdoors. Field lessons used both bagged and radio-tracked pythons to simulate realistic hunts. Truman and Eleanor learned how the scent behaves when tangled with wet air, leafy ground, and waterlogged soil. They also practiced working on long leads while handlers guided them with precise GPS tracking. Then the experiment truly began. In their very first month in the wild, these dogs found multiple large pythons that had successfully avoided skilled researchers for weeks. Scientists watched in disbelief as minutes of sniffing achieved what hours of human searching could not. They saw noses freeze in place, a sudden pull forward, and then the shocking truth that a massive predator had been hiding almost under their feet. News of their success spread quickly through wildlife agencies. For the first time in years, people felt like they were gaining progress against the invasion. Florida had an answer that felt like it truly worked. Other handlers soon joined the fight, bringing in more trained dogs to cover larger areas of the Everglades. Among them was Otto, a German wire-haired pointer known for his unmatched drive. Otto worked alongside Mike Kimmel, a trapper widely known online as the Python Cowboy. Together they became a recognizable team, with Otto's hunts drawing thousands of viewers on social media. But even heroes fall. During one of their hunts, Otto was struck by a car and killed. The loss hit hard. Still, the mission pressed on. The dogs had proven that success was possible, and that nature's oldest partnership could turn the tide of a modern ecological war. Yet beneath every victory, the swamp kept its secrets. Each snake captured seemed to hint at something else moving through the grass. Something bigger, something still learning how to survive in a world it did not belong to. And soon, everyone would learn that the pythons were not finished fighting back. Live bait. In the thick humidity of Florida's wetlands, scientists were running out of time and options. Every method they had tried was failing. The snakes were spreading faster than they could be caught. Something different had to be done, something that made even seasoned biologists uneasy. After countless failed hunts and disappointing results from detector dogs, the team came face to face with a troubling realization. If they wanted to stop the Burmese pythons, they would have to think like them. That meant figuring out what the snakes truly desired most. The answer was disturbing in its simplicity. They were after marsh rabbits, which were once one of the most common animals in the Everglades, but now almost gone because of the invasion. The thought of using them as bait split the scientific community. Some called it inhumane. Others argued that desperate times demanded desperate measures. In the end, a small group of researchers decided to test the theory under controlled conditions. They constructed strong enclosed pens along swamp trails, where the scent and body heat of the rabbits could travel freely through the air. The setup allowed the animals to remain safe while still serving their unintended role as lures. Then came the waiting. Days passed quietly at first dot, but soon the silence changed. Within weeks, the snakes began to arrive. One by one, they slithered toward the pens, their movements deliberate and focused. Over a span of 3 months, 9 pens attracted 22 pythons, and the reptiles lingered around the area for more than an hour each time. The rabbits remained unharmed behind the wire barriers, but what they triggered revealed something critical. The scent of prey had drawn out predators that no amount of searching or tracking had been able to locate before. For the first time, scientists had solid evidence that prey attraction could be the key to turning the tide of the invasion. But no one realized the experiment's success would soon come with unexpected consequences. The birth of the robotic rabbit. Success, though hard-earned, came with consequences no one could ignore. Caring for the small, trembling rabbits demanded endless labor. But the real storm began when images surfaced showing those frightened animals surrounded by giant constrictors. Animal welfare groups and even some scientists within the project began calling the trials cruel. Critics argued that no species, however destructive, justified such suffering. Pressure built until authorities had no choice but to step in. Funding was cut and the live bait trials came to a complete stop. But that ending opened the door to something new. What if the same effect could be achieved without harming any animals at all? The idea sounded far-fetched, but it also carried hope. The key wasn't in the living bait. It was in understanding what attracted the snake in the first place. So the question shifted from how do we trap them to how do we imitate life? Teams of engineers, biologists, and tech specialists joined forces as they combined robotics with wildlife science. Together, they studied every trigger that drew a python in. They analyzed infrared heat, the contrast between warm bodies and cool swamp air, and even the faint, musky scent of rabbit fur. Each detail became a data point for a new kind of bait. From those studies, the idea of a rabbit blueprint was born. Scientists at the University of Florida began designing a decoy that didn't just look real, but behaved convincingly enough to fool a predator. Now, this time, the goal went beyond trapping snakes. Every encounter could be captured by cameras built into the device, allowing it to record vital research data. It was both bait and observer, a machine built to spy on one of nature's most elusive hunters. The development process stayed under wraps, advancing quietly from sketches to working prototypes. There were still critics, but few outside the circle knew what was being prepared. For the first time, scientists had found a way to fight back without harming a single creature. Yet a single question lingered among the team. Would the snakes actually fall for it, or would they see through the trick? Engineering the bait. In the stillness of the Everglades, a strange army was taking its position, not of soldiers, but of machines built to look alive. Florida's scientists had spent years battling the Burmese python invasion, and now They were betting everything on a bold idea that many thought would fail. The new weapons didn't hiss, breathe, or bleed. They looked like ordinary marsh rabbits, the same kind that pythons love to eat. But beneath their fur and soft appearance lay something entirely new. These mechanical decoys, nicknamed robo-rabbits, represented years of trial, defeat, and reinvention. To the engineers, they were a masterpiece of design. To the wildlife officers, it was a final chance to fight back against the snakes that had devoured nearly every native mammal in sight. Each one was carefully constructed using water-resistant polymers, then coated with synthetic fur that looked deceptively real. Beneath the surface, heating pads gave off warmth that matched a rabbit's body temperature. The engineers didn't stop there. Tiny scent emitters were added, releasing an artificial musk that drifted through the humid air, perfectly imitating the smell that drew a python's tongue flickering in interest. Even the ears could move slightly, powered by quiet motors that made the illusion complete. Hidden deep inside was the brain of the operation, which was a small camera and motion-triggered transmitter. Whenever a snake came close, the system would instantly send a signal to biologists stationed miles away. Within moments, trained wildlife officers could move in to locate and remove the intruder before it vanished again into the swamp. Sunlight powered everything. Each decoy carried a small solar panel linked to rechargeable batteries, and this allowed them to survive for weeks without attention. To protect them from other animals or harsh weather, they were placed in strong enclosures that could withstand curious raccoons, heavy rain, and even wandering alligators. The plan wasn't to destroy the snakes directly, but to draw them toward monitored zones where professionals could safely intervene. When the first 120 decoys were deployed across the Everglades, expectations were low. The swamp had crushed plenty of hopes before, and no one wanted to believe too soon. The marsh stretched endlessly, swallowing anything that entered. But this time, something changed. As the robotic rabbits settled into their positions, the Everglades seemed to respond in a way no one predicted. The devices blended so seamlessly with their surroundings that even the wildlife paid them little attention. Then, one by one, the transmitters began sending signals. Miles away, scientists watched the data light up on their screens. Motion detected, heat signatures nearby. The first few alerts were cautious, maybe false readings. But when the cameras started sending images, it was clear. The pythons were taking the bait. Tracking the invaders. A strange pattern began to appear. Cameras hidden inside what looked like harmless rabbits were now recording moments scientists had never seen so clearly before. Massive Burmese pythons, their scales glinting under the sun, slithered toward the decoys in silence. Every slow flick of their tongues was a sign of curiosity, and every tightening coil of muscle brought them closer to what they thought was an easy meal. The data arriving from the field was unlike anything researchers had ever gathered. It was not only about catching snakes anymore. The robotic rabbits were revealing how these invaders thought, where they moved, and even when they were most active. Every camera trigger became a new piece in a growing puzzle, one that mapped the hidden routes and breeding sites of Florida's python population. For the first time, scientists could track migration paths through canals and dense vegetation without stepping foot into the wetlands. The machines were not just bait, they had become spies. But as promising as the discovery seemed, it came with challenges. Each robotic rabbit cost around $4,000, and keeping them functional in the harsh Everglades climate proved difficult. The heat, moisture, and corrosive swamp water tested every part of their design. Teams spent long hours running diagnostics and replacing damaged components to ensure the experiment stayed alive. Whether the project could expand depended entirely on future funding, and no one was sure how far the budget could stretch. Still, the mood among the researchers had changed. After years of chasing pythons with traps, dogs, and human trackers, they finally had something that gave them an edge. For the first time in decades, the people protecting Florida's wildlife felt like they were no longer losing ground. The team set up rabbit pens across South Florida, though they kept their exact location secret. Officials wanted to avoid interference from curious onlookers or those hoping to profit from the discovery. It was too soon to call it a victory, but the first results were enough to spark real hope. Authorities said the program might expand in the coming months, especially in fragile habitats most affected by the python invasion. For now, the robo-bunnies continue to twitch under the Florida sun, waiting for their next encounter in a quiet war between human ingenuity and nature's relentless survivor. The Robotic Rabbit Project marks a defining moment in Florida's long struggle against invasive pythons. What began as a desperate idea is slowly turning into a promising tool of modern conservation. Beyond the technology itself, it has restored a sense of direction to a fight that once seemed unwinnable. If the project gains more support, it could lead to larger networks of artificial prey scattered across critical habitats. Similar designs might even be adapted for other invasive species that threaten ecosystems worldwide. The idea of combining biology with technology is reshaping how humans interact with nature. Instead of reacting to destruction, they are beginning to predict and prevent it. As funding discussions continue, researchers hope to refine the design, make the decoys cheaper, more durable, and capable of operating in harsher environments. There is even talk of integrating artificial intelligence to predict python behavior before attacks happen. But one question remains: will human creativity be enough to outsmart a predator that has already conquered so much? The answer lies somewhere in the still waters of the Everglades, where the battle continues. If you enjoyed this journey through Florida's wildest experiment, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.